All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this seminar. My name is Afonso Solac. I'm civil engineer. I work as Chief Digital Marketing Officer here at CYPE. Let's begin this webinar, this presentation. We'll be talking a little bit about the new features of CYPE Connect and StruBIM Steel. Okay. These two softwares that we are developing a lot, launching different updates with a lot of new options, improvements, optimizing the tools that we have in the softwares. And on past August, we launched the 2024 B version of CYPE. Okay, and this version have different options. Okay, so to the presentation of today, I've selected, let me see here, 10 different new features that were implemented. So if you have the software, if you have been updating your software to the 2024 version, you have the 2024A version, you can now go to our platform, to BIMserver.center, and download the 2024B version for free and update to have these new features that we will be talking today. If you have one of the previous versions, like the 2023 or 2022, then you must add the new features. You must contact our sales team to update to 2024 version. Okay, it's how it works. And let me show you just these new features that we've selected. Okay, I imagine that we will need like 30 or 40 minutes to see everything here, but remember that we are also recording this presentation, so if you want to see again the features that we'll be talking, or see all the presentation again, then you just have to come to our website in the training menu and go to the video gallery, and you can find the recording of this presentation also in our video gallery. Okay. The last information that we have here before we start is about the promo that we have, the discounts that we have. CYPE, this is 40 years birthday of CYPE. So we have different promos and discounts in our store and also with our reseller network. So this is a good moment to update your software or add new applications to your suite because we have different discounts. So access our store, store.cype.com, or contact the reseller of your country because this is a good moment to update your tool. Okay. So let's begin. Remember that you have the chat option on GoToWebinar. So if you remember, on your right side, on the right side of your screen, you have a little option to send messages to us. We'll be answering these questions through the chat. And in the event that we don't have time to answer everything here today, we'll be answering you by mail in the next hours. Okay, so please contact us. Ask if you have any doubt, any suggestion. It's going to be nice to receive your message, and we'll try to answer everything during the presentation, if not by mail later. Okay, so let's begin. As I said before, I've selected here 10 different new features. Let's begin with the first one. Okay, we have here some features, as I said before, that are common, that they can be applied also both for CYPE Connect or for StruBIM Steel. Sometimes I will be showing the new features on StruBIM Steel, sometimes on CYPE Connect, but I will try to explain when these features are from one specific software. If it's the case, I will try to show you those cases. Okay, so let's start with the first one. We'll start using StruBIM Steel to show some of the new features, remembering that almost all the tools that we have at CYPE Connect, they are also inside of StruBIM Steel. So when we access this option here, the connection editor, actually we are working with CYPE Connect inside of StruBIM Steel. Okay, so it's why we have here different features that are common to both softwares. Okay. So the first one that we have here, maybe it's one of the most important new features of this version. Actually, we can see this this new option, is this new feature here in the image of that illustrate our event, is the option to now model built up sections. Okay, built up sections. So now we can create not just rolled sections, or we can also create these build up sections. They can be constant depth sections, or also variable depth sections, like this blue section that you can see here, or also this green one that we can see in the beams here. So now you can do that. There are different ways to do it. Okay, so if we are talking about StruBIM still, now we can create these sections here. Okay, when we model a new section, here in the list of sections that we have, now we also have not just the rolled, the code format, and the tubular sections, but also the built-up sections with rolled steel plates. Okay, when we select it, here we can select the type of section. So we have here double T or I, we have C's, we have a squared, we have T's, inverted T's, and then we select the material to this plates, the plates that will set the section, and also the geometry of this section according to the previous sections that we made before. Okay, so defining here the geometry of these sections. Okay, the second option that we have to introduce these build-up sections, it's importing from other softwares. Okay, so if you work with CYPE 3D, for example, you probably already know that we can export a structure developed or analyze it at CYPE 3D to then import it here at StruBIM Steel, for example, or to Site Connect if we are just analyzing the connections. Okay, so from this version, now you can also export those structures that have build-up sections at CYPE 3D, for example, and then import it here. Actually, this warehouse that you see here, it's that case. Okay, so the warehouse was first analyzed at CYPE 3D, and then they exported to BIMserver.center, and here we started a new project at StruBIM Steel, imported that structure, and then we keep developing here the connections and the other details here at StruBIM Steel. Okay, so this is the second way to add a built-up section here in the programs. So the first one is by modeling, the second one is by importing. And then when we are talking about Site Connect, let me jump here from StruBIM Steel to Site Connect. Here at Site Connect, we can also import the structure, but here we can also create isolated nodes. Okay, so when I create a node that I want to analyze this node, a singular node, I add a name to this node, and then here I can add bars to this node. Okay, so now these bars, for example, let's imagine here I have a bar that I will call B1. I can also now select also here build up sections with rolled steel plates. Okay, so this B1, for example, let's create a simple node here, the B1. Okay, let's create, for example, a bin and a column. So I will add the B1, let's duplicate it here, let's add a C1, that's going to be the column, for example, and the C1 I will apply here an angle, for example, let's at a 90 degrees angle, just to simulate that is a node of a bin reaching a column, for example. Actually, by default, we have this rolled steel, this build-up sections that have constant depth, but we can change these parameters. So let's start changing the B1, for example. So here in the B1, we can select between constant and variable depth sections. Okay, we can also define here the material of this section, and also we can set a specific geometry for that. Okay, for example, like this. But when this is constant, but when we can select variable, you see now that we have here more options, because actually here we have the initial depth, and the final depth of this element. Okay, if I come back to the other one, you see that these options are not available because it's constant, but when it's variable, we have these extra parameters. And to understand what is that, the H1, H2, and length, or L, we have this option here to have an idea to how we add this information. So in this case, although we are creating a node, actually these dimensions, they are related to the bin or the column, the bar, the complete bar. Okay, so the length, it's going to be the length of the bar, the height of the section, the initial part, or the initial depth is going to be this one, for example, the depth near the node, and the H2, it's going to be the opposite depth. Okay, so let's imagine, for example, this bin, it's going to be a bin that is with like 4 meters length, so 4,000 millimeters. It's going to start with 400 millimeters high, and then it's going to finish with like 25 centimeters, so 250 millimeters. So as you can see here, there is a variation here. We can see that a small part of the section here, but it's according to the dimensions of the beam. Okay, we can also add, for example, here an angle. For example, I think if we change this parameter here, like adding 15 degrees, maybe that's too much, like 10 degrees, we can create this situation. Okay, the same thing we can do, for example, with C1. Okay, C1 is constant, but could be variable. We can now just change here. It's going to be like a 3 meters high column that starts with also 400 and finish with 300, for example. And then here we have here these built up sections, in this case with variable depth. Okay, so this is the third way that we have to add this kind of sections to our projects. Okay, the first one, as I said before, we can model it when we are working here at StruBIM still. The second one is by importing the structures from CYPE 3D, and the third one is by creating isolated nodes here at CYPE Connect. Okay, when we accept it, the node will be included here in the list. Okay, and now we must, of course, add all the elements to design the connection of this node. No, so here we just created the node. We must then add all the plates, the bolts, and then also the forces and combinations to then analyze this connection. Okay. Yeah. So the first feature that we have is this one, to create to now also introduce built-up sections. One thing that is cool here is that we can also, let me come back here to the editor. We can also create continuous elements here. Actually, this is not the case. It's something not too common, but here we can add this continuous bar. So if I select the C1 and define that it's continuous, we'll have this situation here. Okay, so you can also do that by defining this this option here. So if I select C1 and press here, the C1 is going to be continuous. If I select the B1 and select here, it's going to be this situation here. Okay, in some cases we have that situation. And just to show you another example, let me come back here to StruBIM still. This is this corner, let's say, the connection between column and bin, but could be also something like this, two bins with build-up sections that are variable. So this is one situation, this is another, and here we have a connection. Okay, so no problem. You can also do this kind of stuff by modeling these connections. Okay, let's open one of these connections just to see the operations, just to have an idea how it works and see some results. So for example, here, let me edit this connection here that is already created. Let me show you how this connection was modeled. So here we have different operations that you can see the list of operations here. Okay, it's a huge list of operations. There are a lot of details, some stiffeners. We have here actually other bins that are connecting here. We have different plates with different bolts. Okay, and just to have an idea how it was before the parameters or the operations were set. Let me unselect all the operations to see the raw node, so without any operations. This is the information that came from CYPE 3D or was manually modeled, okay? And we see, of course, here that there are a lot of problems, clashes, because the connection was in this first state. And then by adding different planes, different adjustments, the connection was constructed, was modeled, okay? Something that is very nice here, when we add a built-up section that is different from the other sections, is the possibility to adjust the different plates that are part of this section. We can add different adjustments according to each plate. Let me show you one example. For example, the first thing that we created here when we started modeling was to create a reference plane, okay? This reference plane was this one. So it was added using this operation here, reference plane, and then we add one plate, okay? One plate that was located in this plan, exactly on this plan, okay? The plate one, with some properties here, some geometry, materials, etc. Then we started creating some adjustments using the options to adjust bars. There was, for example, this one here, the adjustment one. This adjustment one was necessary. Look at the difference. We had this situation and then this situation. Was necessary to adjust the V1 bar, that is this one, to the plate, okay? So I can see that is an adjustment of a bar, that is the bar V1, all the plates of the V1, so bottom and top flanges, and also the web of V1, they will be adjusted to the plate 1B, that is this plate here, okay, plate 1B. But then we have a second situation that is the adjustment number 2, okay? The adjustment number 2, it was just to adjust the web of the V2, that is also a built-up section, okay, to the plate. So here we selected just the web of V2 to the plate 1A. So we can see that is like a cut, like a linear cut here, exactly on the plate, but this cut is just applied to the web of V2. You can see here the bottom and the top flange of V2, they are not adjusted to the plate 1, just the V2. Look at the difference here. In the V1, it was all the plates of the V1. In the V2, it was just the web, okay? Then we keep adding more operations. For example, we introduce a new plate, a plate that would be here, okay? So yeah, a plate with a geometry, a position, and then the next step would be adjust the remaining parts of this V2 to this plate, for example. So for example, the adjustment V2, if I activate it, now I can see that is again the web of V2, but in this case adjusted to a plate that is the plate 2, okay? That is the plate 2. What is the idea here? The idea is you can now add different adjustments to different parts of your section if it's a built-up section, okay? In some cases, it's gonna be easier to adjust everything or all the plates of this section to something, a plane or other section or a plate, or in sometimes it's gonna be necessary or it's gonna be easier to create different adjustments to then finish this the geometry of the section, okay? As you can see here, V2 is not finished yet because we have this little part of the bottom flange, okay? So yeah, then we can keep doing that, adding, in this case, welds, adding another plane, adding another adjustments until we finish the connection, okay? I will just activate everything here to come back to the complete connection with all the stiffeners, for example, all the welds, these elements here to these little beams that we have here in the top of V2, okay? And now we have this connection. And if we want, we can export it to our library. We can create all the drawings to this this connection. We also now know how much we have of each material here. because then we can export the reports, the material reports, and of course we can jump from the model to the analysis. That maybe it's one of the most important parts, especially if we are talking about CYPECAD. If we are talking about StruBIM still, you can also design, of course, but sometimes when we talk just about CYPECAD, the main purpose of the software is analyze the connection. Okay. Here, for example, if I click on stress strain, it will be analyzed. I have here some loads that were introduced before, and then we can see the results of stress strain. We can see also, we can analyze the rotational stiffness. We can analyze local buckling. Okay, there are different options. Remembering that in this case, we are all using the OpenSys engine, okay? A very powerful engine that is developed by the University of California. And in this moment, the engine is analyzing this connection, okay? Here you can see the results, okay? There are different results. For example, the first one that we see is this graphical representation, this color. No, each element is classified based in the maximum demand capacity ratio of the element. So for example, we can see that these welds here that are in the red color, they are not safe, okay, because they are more than 100% of the demand capacity ratio. And we can see that, for example, these plates or these bars, they are in green, so they have between 0 and 20% of their demand capacity ratio, and it's okay. Okay. Of course, if we have one element that is not safe, all the connection, everything is not safe. So we must do something to solve this problem. And here we can see that some checks have not been verified. Okay. Of course, here we can see all the results according to the code that we've selected. In this case, I selected the American code. Okay. Here we can see the maximum plastic deformation that is, in this case, the limit for this element is 5%. We have just 0.35. So in this parameter is checked, this plate that was selected, but we have more cases here. So this is another part of the bottom flange of V1, the web of also V1, the web of V2. And if we select here, we can see just those elements that are not okay. So we have, see here, we have in some cases some welds that don't have the correct size, or here we have some the strength of some fillet welds that are not enough. Okay, so it's going to be easier to change the parameters when we know just the failed checks. Okay. All right, so this is, as I said before, this is maybe one of the most important new features that we implemented in this version. Let's keep going. Let's see the next operations that we have. Let me close this guy here. Let's go to the second one. The second operation that I've selected here is a new operation, okay? A new operation that is inside of our connections editor. We saw here through StruBIM still. Let me do one example here through CyPECAD. Okay, let's come back here to CyPECAD. For example, here I have one node that is very common. This node that is actually one column and two bins. So I have here C1, a continuous column, and then I have B1 and B2. Okay, a very common situation. So let's use this node as an example to see how we work with the new operation that we've implemented in this version. Okay, so let me open the connection editor here. Here we have this interface here. In this case, an empty list, no operations yet. Of course, a lot of clashes here because the node was not treated yet. Okay, let me just change here to have some more space. And the new feature actually is this new button here. Okay, the new lateral plate operation. Okay, actually the plates that we will introduce using this option, it was possible to introduce these plates in the previous version. The difference is that it was necessary to combine different operations. For example, combining trim operations, plate operations, adjust operations, bolts, to create the lateral plate. Now it's going to be easier. It's like a macro. It's one single operation. So let's click here. We can see that one operation was introduced here, one operation that is called lateral 1. And now let's set how this operation, the parameters of this operation. Okay, so as always here at CYPECAD or StruBIM still, when we don't know how to use an operation, the main rule is going to be always the same. Just follow the order that you see here. Okay, so here there are a lot of parameters. So start by filling these parameters from the top and then go to the bottom of this window. Okay, so in this case, the first thing that the operation asks to us is which elements do you want to connect? So which section you want to join to a second section. In this case, I would like to connect the B1 bin, for example, the bin 1 element, okay, to the C1, for example, okay? And then I must tell to the software which part of this B1 I would like to connect to the C1. For example, I'd like to connect the web of B1 to the nearest face that the software find of C1, or for example, the top flange or the bottom flange or the web, okay? In this case, the nearest face, okay? So here, now I can see this plate. The plate was introduced. I already have here a kind of connection. Of course, we must change a lot of things here, but we have this element here, okay? All right, so the first section, it's already done. Let's go to the second section, that is defining the material of this plate. So we can go to our library of materials, the library that we set it before, or we can add a new material if we want, okay? In this case, I already have in my library. Let me select one of these materials here, S235, for example. And okay, we have the material of this plate. Then let's go to this section here, the geometry of this plate, okay? For example, what is the thickness of the plate? Let's work with 12 millimeters, for example, okay? As you can see, each parameter I change, automatically we see the difference here in the preview of this connection. Then we have here, depth, overlap, spacing, and displacement in the I direction, okay? What are these parameters? They are actually the geometry of this plate. Here in this little button, we have a help, and we can see what is exactly the overlapping. It's this parameter here, the depth, that is this parameter here, the spacing, that is actually this little space here, and also the displacement in the I direction, that is based on the axis of the bar in this case, okay? So yeah, let's change some parameters here. For example, let's start with the depth. Let me see something here. What's the size of this beam? It's like 30 centimeters, okay? So let's add a plate that is like 200 millimeters, like this, for example, okay? The overlap, let's maintain 100, but the spacing, let's change it like for 1 centimeters, like 15 millimeters, like this, just a little depth here, or maybe 20 millimeters, okay? So here we have a plate that could work, okay? Like maybe for a pinned connection, something like that, okay? All right, so the geometry of the plate is it's introduced, okay? Let's change here the overlap. Let's put a little bit less, like 80 millimeters, like that, okay? All right, now we have the plate. The next section is bolts, okay? So let's add some bolts. The first one I will add here in the origin, or in this exactly center of this plate, okay? So the coordinates for this bolt is 0 and 0. Then I will duplicate the first bolt to create the second. Here I will change just the one of the directions. So let's add like 5 millimeters, a displacement of 5 millimeters, or maybe 60 millimeters, like this. And I'll do the same with the second. I'll duplicate the second to create the third, and I'll just change here to minus 60, for example. And then we have the third one here, okay? So very easy to introduce these bolts here, but we must select the type of bolt. Again, the type of bolt could be based in the library that we already loaded to the software, including the diameter that we want to work, or we can also create a new boat here. We usually work creating these libraries before, because then we can guarantee the quality of our models. If every time we need to add a bolt or a weld or a plate, we create a new material, probably we will, in some places we can have mistakes. So it's important to work creating these libraries before, and then just select from this button here. It's going to be much easier and more precise. Okay, this is just a good practice. Okay, so here the material again. Let me select one material to this boat. And here it's a boat, so we can select if the execution of this boat is going to be on site or at workshop. So when this boat will be introduced, because according to the selection, then we will have different materials lists. We have different drawings then to then execute this connection. Okay. In this case, by default, the weld option is activated. It's because we have these welds here connecting the plate to the section. We can deactivate if we want. Okay, it depends on what we are doing. And we can select here also how the characters of these welds. The same situation that we have to the weld operation that is somewhere here, or the other plates that we have, the adjust, the end plate, when we also can add welds. Okay, so with this little operation, just one operation, just setting all the parameters, we created this lateral plate. Very easy to create, no problems here. Okay, so yeah, very easy. Okay, once we have the first one thing that I think it's very interesting is create the second one. For example, one thing could be duplicating the lateral one to create the lateral two, and then changing just the profiles that are connected. So the lateral one was connecting the B1 to C1. So if I select here lateral two, I can now select B2 to C1, and easily I have the second connection. Okay. If I want to have the plates in the same size, okay, one thing that I can do is go to B2, and here, for example, change to the back face, and then I'll have this situation. Okay, one thing that we can do, very easy. Another thing that we can do, let me delete this one, the lateral two. Just let's come back to the previous situation. Let's imagine here we would like to have a connection that is a little bit more rigid. Let's imagine that besides this plate, we want to add some plates connecting the not just the web of the section, but also the flanges, the top and the bottom flange to C1, for example. To do that, we can duplicate, for example, the first operation. In this case, maintaining the connection of B1, not the web, but for example, the top flange with C1 again. Okay, so we have this situation. Of course, the geometry here is going to be different, but imagine that the thickness is the same. But for example, the depth could be like, I don't know, in this case, 150, and the overlap like 200 or 250. Okay, something like that. Maybe it's too much, 200. Okay, 200. The bolts, they are different. So yeah, let's change some things. The 0, 0, I will delete. This 60, let's change for, I don't know, 50, just to take a look, or minus 50 here. Let's take a look if it works. Yeah, I think it's okay. Let's add some more bolts. For example, let's add 6 bolts. We have 2. So this one, I will add also a displacement here. So 100 is too much. Let's do with 60, for example. Let's duplicate this guy, and let's add one more here, like minus 50. So here we have a list with 4 bolts. The bolt number 3, I will duplicate it to create the bolt number 5. That's going to be minus 60, like that. And this one, the 5, I will duplicate to create number 6. That is going to be minus 50. Okay, just adding the coordinates, I can add all the bolts here. Okay, all the other parameters could be the same. So the same material to the plate, the same type of bolt, the same thickness, the same type of welds. Or if we need, we can change the bolts, we can change the thickness, we can change the material. Okay, it depends on each situation. Okay, but as you can see, most of the work that I had to create the lateral 1 plate was used to create the lateral 2 plate. Okay, and of course now I can duplicate again the lateral 2 to create the lateral 3 and just change the top flange to the bottom flange, and we have that one. And with just some steps, we transformed our pinned connection in this case, or a single or simple connection, to a more rigid connection, adding more plates. Okay, of course now I could start duplicating the lateral 1 to create the lateral 4 and then connect the B2, okay, instead of B1, and do the same with lateral 2 to just changing here the parameters, okay, adding more plates, and the total number of operations in this case would be 6 operations to have the operation complete, or the connection complete, okay, so something like this, okay. There's another way to do it. This is very simple because here we have lateral plates, so this operation is very useful. But imagine the situation is more complicated. Imagine that we must add more elements, stiffeners, we must add more welds, bolts, we must add modify the corners of the plates, the profiles. Could be something more complicated than that, okay? So there is a new feature of this update that could be useful. To show how it works, I will show you another way to create the connection of B2 to C1 using the information from B1 to C1. But let's imagine that could be more complicated. Okay, so let's do something here. Let me put here again the 6. Let me show you how I can show you. So here the B2. Okay, we have this situation. We can export, of course, these operations to the library, but let's imagine that I would like to export just this part here, the part that is the connection between B1 and C1, but I would like to ignore the connection of B2 to C1, okay? So in the previous version, to export it, it was necessary to export everything, the complete list of operations, okay? So if I just exporting using this button, these 6 operations will be exported, okay? From this version, this new feature is that now I can select just part of my operations. For example, I select the operation 1, 2, and 3, and by using this button, actually, I will export a combination of operations that will be partial, okay? So let's export this one. I'll call it connection bin column, okay? Column. And I will call it type 1, for example, type 1. Okay, so if I accept it, okay, now I can go to my library. Here I have the list of connections that I have in my project, in my computer. I can see here that the one that I created is here. But look at the difference. As I selected just some operations which affects the C1 and B1, the B2 connection is not here, okay? It's not here. So I exported part of my connection, part of the instructions or the operations of my connection. Why this could be interesting? The first thing is because if I started creating a model that is the most complex model that I have in my project, then I can start exporting parts of this complex model to then create other connections that are more that are simpler than the complex one. Okay. The second thing is I can use this combination of operations to then add other parts of the same connection that I have. For example, let's imagine that we don't have this lateral 4, 5, and 6 operations. Okay, and instead of duplicating these guys here, we can import, for example, the connection bin column that we've created here. Okay, we can keep the previously defined operations to not delete those that we've created before, because it's a different pin. Okay, and here what we will do is In my library, the B1 it's equivalent actually to the B2 of my project. So C1 is C1, B1 of my library is going to be the B2 of my project, okay, or of my connection. And by accepting here, let's see what happens. Now we have 3 new operations based on the operation that we've created here in the connection library, okay? So this is a new feature. Now you can export and import parts of your operations, part of your list of operations to the connection library. Okay, so that's very useful. Now you don't have to think about, it's going to be easier to then create connections that are derivated. They are created from other connections using this new button that is here. Okay, export selected operations to the library. Okay. All right, so here we saw 2 different new features. Let's actually we saw 3 different new features: the built-up connections, the new lateral plate operation, and we saw that now we can export a selection of operations to the local library. Okay, remembering that this library, of course, you can also save it to your computer, and the same library that you can use it for both CYPEConnect or StruBIM still. They are it's a common library. So connections created here in CYPEConnect then can be used in StruBIM still, and vice versa. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going to see one more feature. Let me show you one feature that is specific for those cases that we don't have the loads of our project, those cases that we must analyze the connection by defining manually the combinations and the loads of the project. When it happens, when we work with CYPEConnect without receiving information from CYPE 3D, for example. Okay, so here when we jump from the model to the analysis tab, we have here the options to add load cases, different load cases. As you can see here, I have just one load case, and then for each load case, we add the different forces that we have for each element. So, for example, for to be one here in the load case 1, I can add here the different forces. As you can see here, they are all 0. Okay. This is not new. Actually, since the beginning, the software always had this option. As you probably know, if you work with CYPE 3D, when you import the structure from CYPE 3D, these values, they are already defined. They are imported from the model. But you can also now add this information. Okay. As you can see, we always have here one element that is the bearing element that have the bearing capacity. In this case, it's our column, and the column in this case is receiving the loads from that are applied in the other elements. So they are then transmitted through the node to the bearing, in this case, that is C1. Okay. The new feature is here. The new feature is that now we can define how is the external fixity of this element that is the bearing, that have the bearing capacity in our connection. Okay, so this column now can be connected, can be an external fixity just in the initial of this bar, just in the final, or in both ends. Okay, so when we define the initial and the final end, now we can also add forces in the direction or towards the origin of the bar. Okay, so that's very useful. For example, in this case that we have here, let me come back to the model. We have a column that could be a continuous bar for different levels in a building, for example, and we have normal forces or momentums or axial forces or whatever force in this column in the direction of the vertical axis or in the direction of C1. Okay, so now C1 can receive all the forces from B1 and B2, but also we can apply forces because this is a continuous bar, and to do that we activate these options here and then define these forces also in the bearing element. Okay, if you are working, as I said before, if you are working again with CYPE 3D, depending on how you define your elements on CYPE 3D, it's going to be a continuous element and the node will have the forces, so it's going to be easier. Maybe you are already doing that. But if you are working manually, you are creating single nodes, now you also have this option here to define the external, how works the external fixity of these bearing elements, and also define some loads here. Okay, so this is the fourth new feature that we have here. Loads on continuous bearings bars. Okay, now you have this option too. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. We have here another feature that is also related to the analysis tab is the option to define the default values here in the design options tools, the designing options parameters. Okay, we usually don't change it too much when we start setting the software the first time that we work. We define here some parameters, so we can define the maximum size of the element of the discretization. We can also define here what is the length to calculate the average stresses in welds. We can also select here how is going to be the analysis method. Okay, and the new feature is something very simple, but it's very useful. Is now that you can define the parameters that you prefer here according to your preference. You can personalize these parameters, and then you can save these parameters as default options or default settings. And then every time that you start your software again, you don't have to think about these details because they will be the details that you saved before. So once you define the parameters, check this option here, this box here, accept, and these parameters will be saved, and then to other connections, other projects, other moments that you open the software again, they will be the same in this window here. Okay, very simple feature, but it's very useful. You don't have to worry about these parameters again in the future. Okay, all right, so here we have 5 features. Let's keep going. We saw some features very related to the way that we create the connections, the way that we model the connections. So let's see something related to drawings, for example. Okay, to drawings. To do that, let me come back here to choose StruBIM Steel. Okay, so in StruBIM Steel, we have new operations to automatic dimensioning some elements. Okay, so let's do an example here. For example, let's create a sheet of a joint. This joint have different plates. Okay, so let's select it. Here we have an empty sheet. Okay, and let's use here this little button here to insert predefined views of this connection. Okay, so this connection here have different options here with different scales. Okay, for example, 3D view, front, side, plan, plate 1, plate 2. I will deactivate some of these plates just to be something easier to understand. For example, I will maintain just 2 plates and some views of the reference here. Okay, one of the features that we have here is the option to add or not the dimensions of the elements we have here. And according to this option, then we can select the style of these dimensions. Okay, styles that we can create before here in the styles block of or the style section. Okay, so here in the dimension option, we can set the appearance of these dimensions, and here we select if this sheet that will be generated automatically will include or not the dimension of the elements. So I will select it. Okay, here I'll select the size of the paper, for example, A3, A4. Okay, and let's accept it. Okay, let's accept it, and let's see what happens here. So the software will generate for us the elements. It's actually generating more than one element because it's too much for one sheet. Okay, and as you can see here, in some of these elements, we already have the dimensions. For example, these plates were created, the dimensions were introduced automatically according to the style that we selected before. Okay, so this is a new feature. If you have a plate, this plate will have different geometry different characters, this type of plate, the position of each element here, and now you can set these dimensions automatically. Something nice here is that then if you want, you can change these dimensions too, and that's a new feature too, because when you create this continuous dimension here, okay, then if you go near this dimension and use this option here that is modify the geometry, if you select here, now you see that there is a little yellow dot in some places, and some places a red dot. Okay, if we click on the yellow dot, we can change in this direction here the size of the dimension. Okay, and if we click here on the red dot, actually we'll delete this partial dimension and we'll have the new length here. And again, if I click here, I will delete and I'll have the new one. Okay, so in sometimes, depending on the geometry of the element, you can just generate automatically the dimensions and then easily delete those one that you don't want, instead of adding dimensions manually using the option that we have here. Okay, so here actually I'm showing you two options. One that is automatically generates the dimensions of some elements. The elements that we can do that now are those elements based on plates. So the plate, the single plates like this, or those assemblies that are made by built-up sections. And then the second option is the option to delete these intermediate points in continuous dimensions, as we saw here in this example. Okay, again, to activate these yellow and red dots, you must use this option here. Okay, the option to modify geometry, click in the dimension, and then you can change these parameters and do the way that you prefer. Okay, so let's do one example also with an assembly like this. Okay, for example, if I go to my list of sheets, I can filter here all the sheets that I must design here. So let's filter by part, for example. I'll select one of these, the first one, for example. Here I have the empty sheet. I will do the same thing here. I will add a scene, a predefined scene. In this case here, I will select just one. Let me put here another scale. And I will select here one style. I can also change, for example, for hybrid or vector image. Let's put some vector image. Let's accept. Oh, this scale was not good. So let's delete this guy here. And let's add another scale, for example. So 120, for example. Okay, 120. We select this tile. Let's put on vector and maintain the dimension selected. And as you can see here, this bin in this case, or this part of the bin, it's already with the dimensions here. Okay, and again, it's the same situation. I have here some details here, 32 millimeters there. Here we have these dimensions here. If we want, we can edit that guy and delete or modify the dimension, no problem. Or then add more dimensions if we want. Okay, cool. Before we go to the next new feature, let me show you here, because sorry, I closed it too much, because here we are in the list of sheets. I have been creating some sheets to the connections. So as you can see in my list of connections, three of them I have been working. I can see that the content is without changes. Okay, so I can open one of these and I can see these connections. Okay, so I have been creating something here to this connection, or let's see the other one that is a little bit more developed, the connection type 2. I have here another connection. I use the same feature to generate the dimensions. Let me show you here the type 1 also. Okay, so here I have different connections. Okay, why I'm showing you this option here? Because here we have one tool that is very nice, that is the option to create compositions. Okay, this tool is not new, but we have been optimizing the way this tool works. So now it's much more faster to create a composition of sheets that was in the previous version. Okay, actually this is a work of internal optimization. Okay, so we have been doing optimizations in our algorithm to open these windows much faster. As you saw, I just clicked on composition. Just some seconds, I am here in the sheets editor. I'll create here, for example, a new sheet that's gonna be it's gonna be an A2, for example. Let's do here with A2 landscape. Okay, this empty sheet, and here I will add other sheets. I'll add those sheets that I showed you before, those three connections. So I can use this button here and access those sheets if I want. So then I can put it here. That is very nice. Okay. Or there is another option. That is, let me duplicate this composition, or let's add a new composition. Sorry, I duplicated. Let me add a new composition. Using this option here, there is a combination of different parts of the project. So I can combine here other drawings that I have in my project. Could be in the currently selected sheets or in a group of select sheets. Okay, so I can select different elements. For example, I don't know, let's go to P3. Here I don't have too much things, but yeah, let's come back here. I select those that I want, and when I select it, they will be included automatically here in the sheet. Then I can move, I can change, I can edit, I can change the appearance, the position, the size, I can add dimensions, text. So you can add sheets inside of sheets, or parts of a sheet in another sheet. Okay. As I said before, this is not a new feature, but now it's easier to do it. It's faster, actually. It's faster to do it. And that could be very useful to your projects, especially when we have, for example, an overview of the structure and then some details that you want to document adding this combination of files. Okay. So let's keep going. We saw this optimization. Let's see something new that is also related to the text. This is specific for StruBIM still. So as you maybe probably know, the software have this option here to create text. It's very useful because you can classify the elements that you have in your project by this text. There are a lot of proposals for that, but one of them could be, for example, to activate and deactivate parts of the project when you are modeling, or because you want to export then these drawings according to this reference. And the first thing that we can do here is add one or more than one tag to one element. Okay, this is not new. You can add not just one tag, but different tags to an element. Okay, for example, if I activate this little button here, show information texts, when I hover in an element, I can see the information of this element. So in this little box that you see in the right side of the screen, you can see this section have the reference PR3. We can see the length, the description, the weight, and the tags of this bin. Okay, so the tag of this bin is PIF. Okay, if I hover in another one, I will see that the properties of this other bin, in this case, another link, another description, and a different tag. In this case, the PRL tag. Okay. So in the previous version, to add a tag to an element, you just use this button here, assign tag. You select the element that you wanna add this tag. You can also have a multiple selection. You can also use this window to select different elements. Okay, once you select, you confirm with your right button of your mouse, and then you add the tags that you want. Okay, so for example, in this case, it was the PRL tag, that is this tag here. But if I want, I can also change and add the T tag to these elements. Okay, so yeah, very easy. This is not new. This is part of the software almost since the beginning. But the difference here is when you have something more complex. Let's imagine these tags I've created, they are related to the type of material that we have. Or for example, we created a classification based on the materials. But then when we are constructing, let me just come to the beginning here. That's delete that tag that we included. But let's imagine that during the execution of this project, we also want to create two phases for the execution. For example, the phase 1 that will assign a color, for example, red color, and the phase 2. Let's imagine there are 2 moments of the construction. For I don't know, for any, it's just to create an example. Sorry, I let me put it on English. Phase 1 and phase 2. Okay. And let's imagine that even there is a classification by materials, we also must classify by phase. Okay. And part of our structure, let's imagine, for example, that this part here, these elements here, they are part of the phase 1. So I selected all those elements that are different materials, different tags. And now if I just add here phase 1, actually what I'm doing is assigning not just the phase 1 tag to all the elements. I'm assigning all the other checks, all the other phases to all the elements. And maybe I don't have the same materials or the same tags. So this is the new feature now. Now I can select how I would like to add this new tag. If I maintain the default options assigning to the selection of tags, all the tags will be applied to all the elements that are selected. So everything is going to be equal here. But if I select this one, add to the selection of tags, this is going to be empty. And then I will just add a new tag and maintain the other tags that can be different for the different elements. And I will add just this new tag. So it's like an extra tag that I add to the situation that I have before to those elements. So if I do that, now I can see, for example, let's just use here this option and hover, that this guy now have the previous tag that is PIF and phase 1. Okay, if I go to the other, now I'll see the PRL, that is a different one, no, but also the phase 1. Okay, so let's do again, let's do to the other part of the building. For example, I will select now these guys here. Okay, and these guys, they are actually, I will add actually the phase 2 tag. Okay, these guys, phase 2. If we hover here, I deactivate, let's activate again. Here, this guy, I can see that is PRL and phase 2, and this guy is PRL and phase 1. Okay, so now you can add extra tags without changing the previous tags of each element by selecting, when you define the tag, how you want to add these tags. The same thing could be to remove a tag. So now you can add one tag or remove one tag without changing everything here. Okay, something that is not new, but I think it's important to show to you, it's the criteria that we have to represent the colors of these tags in the screen. Because as we saw, we can have more than one tag to one element. So how we see the colors here? What's the criteria? So the criteria is according to the order of these tags here in this table, the colors, we'll see the colors here in the elements. For example, these elements have PIF and phase 1. PIF is here, phase 1 is here. If I move the phase 1 to a position that is in in the top, for example, here, and then the PIF, now I can see the red color. If I go, you put the PIF here, now I can see the pink color. Okay, so according to the position of our tags here in the list, we set how the colors, how we see the colors in the screen. Okay, so the first color that we find in the tags with one element will be the color that will be represented here in the screen. Okay, so in sometimes maybe you can just alternate it to visualize and then activate and deactivate elements. Okay, but it's important to note that this order affects the way that we see the elements in the screen. Okay, so this is a new feature. Now you have more options to add text to your elements by using this new selection that we saw here inside of the text tool. Okay, these options here. All right, we are almost finishing. Let's see the last feature. The last new feature is a very simple feature, but it's also again very useful. That is, let me just come back here to this situation with the colors. I think it's going to be easier to understand. Come back here. So let's imagine that we want to copy something here. Okay, could be one bean, one composition of different beans. Okay, so to copy, we use this option here. We select the elements we want to copy. Let's imagine we want to copy this element here. Okay, so then we select the elements, we confirm with the right button of the mouse, and then we select a point that is going to be the reference to copy this element. For example, this point. Okay, I can select it, or I can select, for example, to maintain the same distance, a point that is somewhere here. For example, yeah, I got the middle of this element. Now I can come to the other guy here and put it here. Okay, the same point. Okay, this was possible since the beginning again. Okay, so we can easily do that. The new feature now is that we don't need to close this option and repeat the process again. So now these snaps, they also work with the element that we've just copied. Okay, so I've created one. Now I can go to the next. If I use this option, it's going to be even easier. Okay, I can create easily more elements by copying from the past copy that we did. Okay, so you don't have to close the option, select the elements again, capture this point again. No, just start copying and using the reference, the past copy that you created. Okay, very simple feature, but very useful. So I'm sure that if you are modeling elements here in StruBIM Studio, you missed this option. So update your software to the version B, and then this is gonna work better. Okay. All right, I think that's it. We saw here 10 of the new features that we implemented on the version 2024B. The 2024C, it's we are working to release it in the next weeks. Okay, as you know, CYPE is always developing tools and adding more features according to the needs of our users. So if you want to know when we publish a new feature, you can follow us in the social media. You can follow us in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, also on YouTube, Instagram, where we always announce the new features when we publish new features. And remember, as I said before, we have very good discounts during these days by our promo. If you're looking to update your software, maybe that's the right moment. And if you already have the 2024 version, remember to update your software by downloading the new version from the BIMserver.center platform. Okay, I think that is it for today. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much to be here with us during these moments. I hope you enjoyed, you learned a little bit more, and see you in the next time.